Good morning, Rabbi. Welcome to Breakfast in the Class. Breakfast in the Class today is dedicated for a speedy and complete Fuash Lema for Chana Bat Sima Fega and Eliyahu Shimon ben Mazal Fortune for a speedy and complete Fuash Lema. Dedicated by Edward Sofer, Hazaku Baruch. Also dedicated by Edward Sofer in loving memory of his parents Ray and David Sofer, Lilu Mishpatim, David ben Moshe ben Aima, and Simcha bat Hana. Breakfast in the Class is dedicated, as always, in loving memory of Ms. Lily Safar Nishmat Leah Bat Chana. Her philanthropy has reached so many throughout the entire world, and dedicated for the Askara of their grandmother Sipora Bat Shemuel Alea Shalom, sponsored anonymously. Also sponsored today, Lilu Nishmat Avraham ben Yecheskel Vezolecha, sponsored by his son Maurice Chash, MD, as well. Sponsored in loving memory of Jeffrey Garson, Alav Shalom, Nishmat Yaakov ben Kohab, sponsored by his mother Stella Garson, and in loving memory of Nishmat Yaakov ben David Gerasi or Gersia, maybe, sponsored by Joey Shield, and as well Nishmat Yaakov ben David Gerasi on his Askara, sponsored by his daughter Tamar Gerasi. Ruach Adonai Tenichel Began Eden, Refuah Shlema, Refuah Nefesh V'Taguf for those that need it, for Shiduchim, for children, Be'ezrat Hashem, Marke de Itle, Marke de Letle, whatever anybody needs, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yimaleh et Chesronchem Bekarov Mamash. My friends, I want to share with you an idea that is one of my favorite ideas in all of the Torah teachings. It's a concept that comes from Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, and he asks the question in a form of a challenge to the halacha that's presented in the Torah. Torah tells us that if the servant decides, if a person has a non-Jewish servant, they decide after 7 years when they're supposed to go, leave the house by the years of 7 years after he's been there. He decides he doesn't want to go. Hafti et ishti, I love my servant wife. Hafti et, I love my master. I'm very happy to stay here. I don't want to go. I don't want freedom. I don't want to leave. What's the halacha? V'higisho adonav el hadelet. His master should take him to the door, or the mashkof, to the door post, right? Viratza et oznav, and he pierces his ear b'martzea. The English translation of martzea is with an awl. Okay, had that don't go to the mall to get his ear pierced. They take him to the door, and who does it? V'higisho adonav el hadelet. The master is the one that needs to carry out this process. Asks Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, hold up. Why are we piercing the guy's ear? The Chachamim explain that this is meant to be a lesson to this person, to the servant. Hashem said to the Jewish people, Ki li b'nei Yisrael avadim. You're supposed to be only servants or subservient to me. A person, a Jewish person, even a regular person, should not have another master. Their master should be Borei Olam. You went and chose a master for yourself when you had the ability to walk free. Why you did it in the first place? You had a debt to pay, you stole something, fine, I get it. All right. But now that you have an opportunity to leave, you have an opportunity to walk free, and you're not taking it, that ear that should have heard at Mount Sinai, Ki li b'nei Yisrael avadim, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, and did not hear it, should be pierced. Ask Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, granted. That's why the servant's ear needs to be pierced. But what does that have to do with his master? What does it have to do with the Adonav? What did the master do? Let's make the question maybe a little bit sharper. And in doing so, the second question will perhaps answer a little bit the first and bring out a very important point. What is this master doing, Sachakol? What is he doing? He could go and hire anyone that he wants. But what did he do? He went and he hired a Jewish servant. The Gemara tells us about a Jewish servant that a person who acquires an Eved Ivri, kana adon la'atzmo. He acquired a master for himself. Why? Not because he's Jewish, he's going to argue with you on everything. But because if he has two of anything, if there's two steaks, he's got to share the steak with the guy. If he has one pillow, what does he do? He gives the one pillow to the Eved. What kind of Eved is that? The halakha says he can't give him any menial tasks. So why did you hire this worker who's also not a worker but your master? Why would you bring this into your life? What would the purpose be? It seems like this is a really bad choice on behalf of this Jewish master. And the Chachamim explain that what we're referring to over here, what we're looking at over here is effectively a rehab program. This is a guy who, when he didn't have money, didn't strike out, try to make it on his own. He stole something, right? That's what he did. He's supposed to learn. He's supposed to get a second chance now in the house of his Jewish master. So this guy, he seems like a pretty good guy. He's doing a rehab in his own house. He's acquiring a master for himself, all in order to do what? All in order to be able to communicate to this person that there's another chance, that there's another way to live, that you don't steal something because you don't have something. You figure out how to earn the money. You figure out how to work hard, how to be able to make an honest living. So why is the master part of this? Answers Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, the master also has and bears some responsibility. And what is that? If a person could live under your roof for 6 years and not learn the value of Ben Chorim, not feel strong enough to stand up on his own, to walk out the door, to go make a life for himself, then there's not only a defect in him, there's a defect in your home. Your home is not producing something healthy. And therefore, not only does he need to be part of the process, but so do you. And I learned from here a tremendous lesson. The Torah does not tell us in any of the Pesukim that the master has responsibilities towards this Eved. It doesn't say, and every day they should sit down and pray Shacharit together. It doesn't say he should listen to breakfast and the class with his Eved. It doesn't say that. So the Torah doesn't communicate any de facto responsibilities that I have towards him. So what is Rabbi Yisrael Salanta teaching us? And the answer, my friends, is so powerful. He's teaching us that the primary form of education that happens in a person's home is not mandated, communicated information. It's osmosis that communicates that information. The way you hold yourself, the business deals that you do, the things that you say, the way that you treat people, from your wife to the Eved, to the USPS guy that never delivers anything on time, okay? To the FedEx guy, to the Amazon, to Instacart, right? How do you treat people? How do you speak to them? How do you hold yourself? This guy, he lives with you. The people who live with you, it's very hard to fool them. Because they don't see you when you're on. They see you when you're tired, and when you're not feeling so good, and when you're not in a good mood, and when you came back from the business meeting where you had to be on all day. Now you came back, now's your chance to kick off your shoes and be a monster, right? He sees it all. The primary form of education is osmosis. And my friends, this idea that Rabbi Yisrael Salanta teaches us with regards to Eved Ivri, I think is something that is very important for us to understand with regards to the values that our homes and our actions, by osmosis, naturally, quietly, over time. They tell a story about a certain rabbi who he had someone in his community where this guy, he came from a religious background, studying yeshivot. He never went to any classes. He never learned. Anyway, it comes time for the guy his kid has a bar mitzvah. And he goes to see the rabbi, and the rabbi says, listen, are you encouraging your son to study Torah? And the man says, yes, Rabbi. I tell him all the time how important it is to me that he studies Torah and he learns. And the rabbi says, honey, if your son doesn't see you learning Torah, if your son hears you say how important it is to you that he studies Torah, you know what he'll grow up to become? A person who also doesn't study Torah and who tells his son to study Torah. That's what he'll learn from you. He's not going to see or listen to what you're saying. He's going to see how you're behaving. The line that I remember, it's such a powerful line. The line goes, I cannot hear a word that you say because what you do screams so much louder. This is what Rabbi Yisrael Salanter is teaching us, is giving us. This is the gift of this lesson. And sometimes I think parents are unaware of how much they teach their children and how much they pick up. And by the way, you're not only teaching your kids, you're teaching your wife. Wives, you're teaching your husbands. You teach your guests. You teach your friends. How do I know this? It's a Beferush Mishnah in Masechet Avot. The Mishnah says, Harbe lamarti mirabotai. I learned much from my teachers, more from my friends. Umitalmidai yoter mikulam. That means that every person has people above him from whom he learns, people equal to him from whom he learns, and people below him who he learns most of all from. Your house, you know that symbol that you have on the recycle bin? Arrow, arrow, arrow. That's the learning process. You teach your kids things, and your kids teach you things. There's someone here who's learned a lot from his father. But I don't see his father leading the prayers. I see the son leading the prayers. And I promise you, there's something that the father will learn from the son. We're always learning. Says Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, when someone comes to you thirsty, he's forced into a position of change. I want you to teach him something. But I also don't want to tell you that you have to teach him something. Because if I tell you to teach him, what will you do? You'll walk up to him and you'll tell him, you're doing this wrong, you're doing that wrong, you're a no good for nothing person, you need to be more honest. What's a person who's not honest? He's a piece of garbage. That's what you'll say. So the Torah was so careful. This person who needs a second chance, and we all need second chances. I need you to teach him something, but I need you to not teach him something. So how can you teach him? Over time. Gently. There's a rabbi in Eretz Israel, his name is Rabbi Tosig. He's sitting in a waiting office for a doctor. All of a sudden he sees a fellow walk in, no kippah, no tzitzit, regular secular Israeli guy off the street. The guy sits down, reaches in his bag, pulls out Masechet Yevamot, opens up the Gemara, starts learning. In the waiting room. Now, anyone here who's learned Gemara will know that there's 3 Masechtot that are the hardest Masechtot in all of Shas. What are the 3 Masechtot? Yevamot, Nida, Eruvin. Spells the word Ani, poor guy. Because that's an area of riches, which the Torah is indeed riches, right? Which is very hard to acquire. So this guy with no kippah, no sissi, is sitting there, plugging away Gemara Yevamot. It's hard because it's one of those things that you need to stay engaged. Okay, 1 second. Reuven and Shimon, 2 brothers, they marry Rachel and Leah, and Rachel and Leah this, and you have to follow all the relationships, and they're related to Shniyot, Shlishiyot, the back and forth, and then they did this and they did that. They're complicated cases that you need to kind of focus and follow and understand. He sees the guy, he can't believe it. Anyway, after 5 minutes, he sees the guy learning. The guy gets up, walks up to the rabbi, And he says, you look like a rabbi. He says, I am. He says, do you mind helping me with this Gemara? The rabbi, by the way, every rabbi will tell you, there's always a moment of horror where a person who's clearly not religious is coming over to you to ask you a question, and you're a little afraid that you might not know the answer. He's carrying a Masechet Yevamot. If you're not in it and you're not holding there, it's not fresh. So he feels like a little bit. Anyway, you read Baruch Hashem, he reads the Gemara, he knows exactly what it's talking about. He explains the answer. Before the guy goes to sit there, he goes, but tell me, you don't look to me to be a very religious guy. He says, I'm not. He says, how does a not so religious guy walk into a waiting room, sitting and learning Yevamot by himself on his free time? The guy said, I'll tell you the truth. I live in an apartment building. One day I noticed a bunch of religious people walking into the building, going into the apartment next door to mine. I didn't think anything of it. These religious people, they do their thing. But then the next day, again in the evening, a whole bunch of people come, they go to the apartment again. I'm trying to think to myself, is there a celebration? Is there a party I wasn't invited to? What's going on here? Again the next day, and then again the next day. A week goes by. After a week, I woke up to one of the guys and I said, what's going on here? Every day, I see you guys, 7 p.m. You come here, you go to this apartment. Guy says, listen, there's a guy here. He's an avrech. He studies in Kollel, young rabbi, or rabbi in training, whichever. And he gives a Gemara shiur. He gives a class in Daf Yomi, where they learn a page every day from the Gemara. Guy never heard of Gemara. He doesn't know Daf Yomi. But if this is happening every day and people are coming, he thinks maybe it'll be something I'm interested in. So he knocks on the door and he says to the avrech, he says, I hear you have this class going on. Would you mind? I'm curious. Would you mind if I sit in? The guy says, sure, no problem. He goes, but I'm not religious. Is it okay, if I come as I am, without my kippah, and I don't want to come in and, and pretend I'm someone that I'm not? Is that okay? Well, I don't want to offend anybody. In Tel Aviv, you have to be very careful. Everyone gets offended from everything. So he says, sure, no problem, don't worry. And a guy comes in, nobody says a word. They give him a Gemara. He sits down. On his very first day, the guy says, I asked the rabbi a question. The rabbi said, wow, what a question. This question you're asking, it appears in the Pnei Yehoshua. Very complicated, a very deep book. And he opened up the Pnei Yehoshua and he showed me he asked the question. I couldn't believe it. The second day, again, I asked a very good question. He said, that question is in the Maharsha. Again, very complicated, very high understanding book, question in the back. If you're learning Gemara and the rabbi tells you the Maharsha's question or the Pnei Yehoshua's answer, you're doing well for yourself. He goes, I felt great. 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, still no kippah. I kept thinking someone was going to say something, but nobody said anything. And I'm enjoying it. I love it. He says, but after a few days, I asked the guy, I said, I don't understand. I'm an engineer. I studied for years. Oftentimes, they would give me a book, complicated. I have to read it for class from cover to cover by myself and understand it. It takes a long time to even understand what's going on. Here, I'm studying this ancient Gemara in Aramaic for 1 day, and already I'm so on the money that I'm lining up questions like the Pnei Yehoshua and the Maharsha. How is this possible? And the rabbi said to me, this young rabbi, he said, the Torah is not like other wisdoms. The Torah is a spiritual, living thing. And when a person wants to learn the Torah comes towards him. Me'ira lo panav. It shines its face towards him. It welcomes him in. And by the way, I must tell you, I've been teaching Torah now for I gave my first class when I was 8 years old. Not gonna lie, I started a kids minyan when I was 8. I even made the tickets myself. I drew them hand-drawn, okay? So I've been teaching for quite some time. Amazingly, this is an occurrence that happens all the time. A guy will just join the shiur and he asks a great question. How did that happen? So some people say, beginner's luck. No. The Torah knows that this guy's trying. So what does it say? I want you to come. I want you to learn. The Torah opens itself to him. I must tell you, we've been studying Gemara for quite some time in our Gemara Shiur on Sundays and Wednesdays. And the guys will tell you, we have a few of them here. All of a sudden, one day, we're sitting in a class, and one guy asks a question. I said, hold on, that's the Gemara's question. Next question. Another guy answers the question. That's the Gemara's answer to that question. Then another guy answers, that's the following. It was like they were sitting there like Ravina Ravashi, and they were composing the Gemara. I wanted to cry tears of happiness. But that's what it was. They showed that they wanted to come learn, and they were gifted the ability to ask questions, to answer answers, like the Amoraim from 2,000 years ago. You want to do it? The Torah says, Fadal, I will make myself understood to you. My friends, if in your house, if that's how it works, then people will learn. The rabbi says, okay, it's amazing. He says, and you know what? I'm months later, and not one person has said even a word to me about my kippah, or lack thereof. Hey, the rabbi said, wow, what a special rabbi. What's his name? The guy tells him his name. As soon as he finishes his appointment, he looks up in the phone book. You guys remember those? He finds this rabbi's name from this neighborhood. He calls him up. He says, I just want to tell you, I just met this guy. He's not religious. He's sitting here in the waiting room of the doctor, whips out a Gemara Yevamot, studying himself, asked me a question, I gave him the answer, and I asked him, he tells me this amazing story about how no one has said a word to him about his kippah. No one has asked him to put on tzitzit. No one told him to go get a black hat. No one told him anything. They just welcomed him in. They made him feel part of the group. And they said if he wants to learn Torah, I want to tell you, I'm so impressed. I'm a rabbi for years, he says. It's an amazing thing what you did. You're so special. He says, just tell me, promise me one thing. He says, as time goes on, it's going to get a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more difficult for you or for the people in the shiur not to say anything. You're going to just want to say something. Tell the guys. He says, Rabbi, we beat you to it. We already took on amongst us on the very first day that he showed up that if he's here for 10 years without a kippah, no one's going to say a word. Every person in the shiur, we're all on the same page. Welcome him as he is. See him as he is. Appreciate that he's taking this one step, even if he's not taking that step. The rabbi said, that's amazing. Would you mind, he says, would you mind keeping me updated? I know, he says, that there'll be big changes. Would you mind keeping me updated? It's only another month or two before he gets a phone call from this young rabbi, and the rabbi says, I gave you my word, I want you to know that the other day there was a knock at the door after the shiur, and standing at the door is this man and his wife. And the wife says, I never came over before, but I just want to tell you, since my husband had started coming to the shiur, I've seen unbelievable changes in him. He's married my sister. No, I'm joking, right? This is a little Gemara Yevamot joke. Right? Unbelievable changes in the way he treats me, the way he speaks to the children, the way he conducts himself. His business has been more successful. Just been so much beracha in our lives. And this is not me, and this is not what I believe in, and it's not what I was raised to do, but I see that it works. Would you mind coming over one night to our house? We've decided to kosher our entire kitchen. Still not wearing a kippah. We decided to kosher the kitchen. Amazing. That's fantastic. He says, keep me involved. Keep me updated. It's Erev Rosh Hashanah. The man calls me, says, I promised I would keep you updated. I just want you to know that before Erev Rosh Hashanah, it's the beginning of the school year, this man and his wife, they took their children, each and every one of their children. They pulled them out of the non-religious school in town, and every one of those kids is now going to a religious Jewish school. Still not wearing his kippah. But he's changed his whole life. My friends, I don't know the end of the story, but I could probably guess that the man changed everything about his life. And what was the last thing that he changed? his kippah. You know why? It wasn't about the kippah. The whole thing had one condition. His entire growth trajectory had one condition. Will they accept me without a kippah? Tzitzit you put on because you can't see. But will they accept me? And now my kitchen's kosher, but I'm still not wearing a kippah. Is someone going to say something? Are they going to treat me differently? The Eved, the reason why he's coming to your house is to change his opinion of himself and his future. So the Torah says, don't give him a Gemara shiur, give him a pillow. Give him a steak. Make sure that he sees the way you conduct yourself. And if you fail at that, then he has failed and you have failed. But that's the way that you treat, that you grow, that you give a second chance, that you raise someone to change an element of their life. There's something that's wrong, okay. Accept that part and change everything else. That will come too. This method of education, it requires a little bit more thought, a little bit more planning. But my friends, never miss a chance to be able to teach your kids without saying a word. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen.